Hello, my name is Seth Moxie. I'm 11 years old and I'm a 6th grade student at Summit Academy, where I'm honored to serve as head boy. I enjoy learning about Bahamian history, and I believe others would love to too. As our country heads to its 50th anniversary, I'm excited to share a video series called The Road to Independence, a primary school perspective by Seth Moxie. You can find these videos on a YouTube channel created for this project called Bahamian History for Kids. This multi-part series sets out the key events leading to Bahamian independence and then focuses on the Burma Road riots, Black Tuesday, Majority Rule Day, and Independence Day. To understand Bahamian history, you need to understand that life in the Bahamas was not always what it is today.
1942 Burma Road riot. 1953, PLP formed. 1956, anti-discriminatory resolution passed by Etienne Dupuche. Then 1958, you have the general strike. Then in 1959, male universal suffrage. 1961, women get the right to vote. 1962, they exercise the right to vote. April 27th, 1965, Black Tuesday. And then, of course, January 10th, 1967.
The Bahamas became an independent nation on July 10th, 1973, ending 325 years of British rule. When a country becomes independent, it means it now fully controls itself. I found it very interesting that it was actually a group of young Bahamians called Unicom that was the first or one of the first groups calling for the country to become independent. Let's learn more about independence and the role that young Bahamians played in this major change in Bahamian history.
Of the Bahamas, which I am sure he will preserve and operate to the best of his ability and to the lasting benefit and happiness of all Bahamian people. It only remains for me to wish the government and people of the Bahamas the very best of luck throughout the future.
I think we were probably the 5th country in the Caribbean to become independent. So it was very much a trend, a global trend that was sweeping the British Empire, because all of these countries were formerly colonies of the United Kingdom. And as they fell one after another and became independent, that was really the end of the British Empire. The first wave of leaders of this period, local leaders, had come out of schools in England. So people like Lyndon Pindling, Paul Adley, Orville Turnquest. Most of these guys had gone to London to study law. In most cases, one or two did medicine, but most of them studied law. And the thing about going to London was that they were exposed to all of these other leaders from Asia and from Africa and from the Caribbean who were preaching the independence gospel. And so naturally when they came back home, they brought it with them. The PLP, which was campaigning for independence, won that general election. And it was immediately announced that the country would begin to move very aggressively towards independence. And a year later, we did in fact become independent. But I think there was a sense that it was a coming of age. It's like, living with your parents, and then you reach a point where you say, I want to live on my own. I want to start my own family. I want to get married and have kids, and I don't want to be hanging on mommy and daddy anymore. I think that's the same sort of thing. Except in the case of independence, it wasn't a case of individuals saying that. It was the whole country saying that, look, we have been, in the shadows of Britain all these years. We think it's time that we stand on our own 2 feet.
It's the question of what is the rightful place of a national in his own country. The overall objective still is to advance Bahamians to the very top spots in this country.
Perhaps the most important voice in this group was A.D. Hanna, the Honorable Arthur D. Hanna, who became Governor General. But when he came back, he was one of the few who was, preaching the independence gospel. Your own grandfather, Sir Franklin Wilson, and I and others were part of a group called Unicom. And we were probably the first group in the country that consistently promoted the idea of independence.
That's the name UNICOL, University College. Bahamian students who were studying abroad at the time came together in the summer of 1965 and said, while we're home, we should do more than just have parties and have a good time. We should get to know each other better and exchange and talk and debate and help prepare the country to become an independent country. We were this first wave, not first, but early wave of Bahamians who had an opportunity to go to university and colleges. And we were literally from all over the world, but primarily in the United Kingdom, Canada, and the West Indies. And there was this sense that to whom much is given, much is expected. You can't just come home and have parties and just have a good time. You gotta do something, you gotta be involved, you gotta show people and help, you gotta work. That was the mindset. UNICOL became too sort of like narrow. It became sort of like just university students. So people who did not necessarily go to universities did not feel it was necessarily for them. They thought it was just, if you didn't go away to university, this was not for you. So we changed the name from UNICOL to UNICOM, University Community.
In the run-up to independence, to the general election campaign for independence in 1972, there were a lot of pockets of resistance in the country, particularly in Abaco. There was actually an anti-independence movement in Abaco where people were campaigning to remain British. They didn't want independence, and actually got a little violent. There was a case of somebody's plane being blown up in Marsh Harbor. There were threats that they were going to be of civil war, that if they weren't allowed to remain British, that they would take up arms. During the election of 1972, which was the election to decide whether we were going to become independent or not, there were two main parties then. One was the PLP, which was campaigning for independence, and the other was the Free National Movement, which is still around, still the main opposition party. And they were basically opposing independence. In fairness to them, it wasn't so much that they were against the idea of independence, they were against the idea of independence now, because they thought that the government of the day couldn't be trusted, and that I guess what they were saying between the lines is, wait till we get in power, and then we become independent. There was this great desire, particularly among younger Bahamians, to bring freedom to the next level, and that next level was to become independent, because that was the ultimate way in which you were telling the world and telling each other really that it's time now to stand on our own 2 feet.
We are prepared to shoulder our responsibilities. And despite the ups and downs which we know will come, we know too that with God's help and the genius of the great Bahamian people, we are going to make it.
Scan here for a keepsake activity sheet. Happy 50th Independence, Bahamas.
Thank you for watching.